Could the 2026 NHL Draft see a repeat from 2025 where the uncontested number one prospect doesn't end up going number one or even top five at the end of the day? Is Gavin McKenna perhaps not the lock at number one that we thought coming into the season? We explore that question on today's show, as well as some of the contenders for that slot and why some questions may be arising.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA scout over at Elite Prospects, and on today's episode, we're going to be looking at the top end of the upcoming 2026 NHL Draft. And there are some interesting questions that have been arising in the public on social media, and also within some scouting circles with the early returns of the season beginning. And we're actually seeing these players playing in their draft years now. And I've certainly already watched a good amount of Gavin McKenna tape since he is under my umbrella that I am watching here covering the USA for EP, and he's been a whole bunch of fun to watch, but he's certainly not been perfect either. So we're going to delve into what he does at a tremendously elite level, how dynamic he is, as well as some of the holes that could maybe leave room for questions as to who will end up going at number one, because there are some fantastic contenders for that spot this season. This is a stacked draft class, especially through the top 10, top 20. Overall, the first round is really, really strong this year. So Gavin McKenna is going to have to really prove his worth to hold on number one. It's not going to be something that's just a given this campaign. So really fascinating to kind of keep an eye on how this is going to develop over the course of the season. But we're not going to go too far into the clickbait here just yet. Gavin McKenna is still the favorite to go number one. That has not changed, but we are starting to see some discussions around it, and I think it's interesting to perhaps explore some of the themes that drive these conversations. So we'll dive straight into talking about McKenna here in the first segment. And the second, we'll talk about a couple very strong contenders, such as Ethan Belchetz and Ivar Stenberg out of Sweden. And finally, we'll wrap it up with another NCAA talent that I'll be watching a lot, that I just started watching because this was his first weekend of play of the season. And that is Keaton Verhoeff, the big right shot defenseman with an absolute hammer of a shot from the point. So before we jump into everything here today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So Gavin McKenna, a name that has been floating around the hockey sphere for seemingly ages at this point. He's been really in the spotlight since the age of 14, 15 years old. He came into the WHL as an exceptional status player, and he has just been breaking records left, right, and center with his production and his dynamism for Team Canada. He's looked really good at multiple levels. We kind of discount the World Junior Championships last season because no one looked good there, and Gavin McKenna had 1 goal in 5 games there, but you only have to rewind about 8 months further back than that, and he would have broken a tournament record at the U18 Worlds for Team Canada, scoring 10 goals and 20 points in 7 games en route to a gold medal victory, were it not for James Higgins scoring 22 points in that same tournament. So McKenna has made his debut in college hockey with Penn State University. I think it's a very good fit for him. There's a lot of players in that lineup that are not just very talented, very good at the game of hockey, but also players that can insulate him really well with his weaknesses, as we will explore on the defensive side of the game. This is a team that has a whole bunch of pace and intensity and physicality. He's largely been playing with Reese Laubach as his center, a San Jose Sharks prospect who is all pace, all intensity, very detailed player. And Aiden Fink, the Nashville Predators 7th round pick from a couple years ago, who's all offensive skill. And those two guys with him and McKenna have really combined for some beautiful sequences so far, with McKenna serving up passes on the platter for easy goals for Aiden Fink. He got 2 primary assists in his NCAA debut, and one of those was just the easiest goal that Fink is going to score in his career, and the other one fed Charlie Serrato of the Carolina Hurricanes on the power play. But what does Gavin McKenna do so well? I'm going to link down below an article that I wrote last week about his opening weekend in the NCAA, which delves a little bit more into some details than you're going to get here in the podcast. But to sum it up, Gavin McKenna is unmatched in college hockey already in terms of his dynamic skill set. This is a player who is just so innately deceptive that he keeps defenders guessing every single turn. And what makes him just so dangerous with the puck on his stick is he doesn't need to look down at the puck to handle it. He doesn't have to look at his teammates to pass perfectly weighted passes into their wheelhouse. He can do everything with just a little pre-scan here, pre-scan there, but with nothing divulging what he's actually going to do in the moment when he releases the puck. So defenders are always on their heels. And he does this with elite level skating. His feet, his edge work are so dynamic. The handling keeps up so effortlessly. And he's a true dual threat. He's got a wicked shot. He can beat goaltenders from range. But really what sets him apart is just game-breaking playmaking ability. In terms of raw playmaking talent, I can't tell you the last player that I've watched coming through the draft that can match what Gavin McKenna can do. I mean, Ivan Demidov came relatively close perhaps, but I really do think that McKenna's on another level in terms of prospects that I've scouted in my tenure doing this. And this is the 6th draft class I'm doing. So to say that I haven't really seen a player that can do the things that McKenna does at this age as a playmaker, that's saying quite a bit. That's almost as closer to a decade than 0 years in terms of experience and sample size in terms of players. And McKenna truly is fascinating in that sense. But what elevates that skill is a lot of detail as well in the offensive zone. Like, I've seen him really pickpocket opponents in the offensive zone, and he's able to turn defense into offense so darn quickly. It really is so impressive to see with Gavin McKenna, the stick lifts, the quick little just like pacey moments he's able to layer in to his defensive implications, especially in the offensive neutral zones, that he's able to really just immediately steal possession, and within 2 or 3 puck touches, it is on a teammate's stick in a high danger area for a great scoring chance. And that has already led to 5 points through 4 games of college action. And I think that he's just a player that has this ability to just teach a masterclass in manipulation. He's so manipulative with the puck on his stick. The creativity is ceaseless, and he's able to bring just, I think, such a variety in terms of his on puck ability that defenders have such a difficulty anticipating or predicting what he's going to do. He commands such respect already, and on the power play already in college, he is the de facto quarterback, and he does what he wants. He really is able to do anything that he sets his eyes on with that space and time on the man advantage at the college level. But this is not to say that he's a perfect player. And this is part of the reason that we're doing this episode here today, that there are some question marks. Not to say that he's slipping off of first overall just yet, or that he's even within a month or two of mediocre performances of that being the case. But I do think that the defensive side of the game needs a whole lot of fine-tuning and of grown habits, because these things are not going to fly in the NHL. So to kind of sum it up on the defensive side, in his own zone, there have been quite a few shifts already in college where the expression I used in the article was where he's come across like a lost child in the grocery store, scanning around for his mother, looking for directions and help, where he just kind of stands off to the side, not really tracking any opponent, just kind of waiting for a turnover to be caused. And once that happens, he reacts and starts going north. But that passivity is just not an option at the college level, let alone when you get to the professional ranks. So I could definitely see that there being some frustration on the coaching side this season at Penn State. But again, I think that the skill is so overwhelming with McKenna. It's going to trump everything else in terms of the impact he makes in college hockey. The pros are always going to outweigh the cons, but the cons have been nothing to gloss over so far this season in terms of that lack of activity and engagement. He's far too intelligent a player to stop scanning in the defensive zone and stop his feet from moving. He can be really disruptive. He's shown this in terms of stealing pucks in the offensive zone. And for that to just dissipate in his own end, that needs work. And I think that the growing pains here have been quite painfully obvious for anybody that's tuned in so far to watch McKenna. But it has not been more obvious than the truly superstar level of on-puck skill that Gavin McKenna possesses. He's really that special a player in possession, and I think that that's going to give him a lot longer of a leash than most players are afforded as freshmen in college. He's already been playing massive minutes, playing 18 to 22 minutes a night so far this year with Penn State, but the deficiencies here are certainly there. They exist, and I can see why some people are having some elements of doubt. But if I were a betting man, I would not be placing any swings in terms of McKenna not going first overall at this stage. I think he's still the overwhelmingly likely candidate for all the reasons that we mentioned here with that dynamic skill. And again, if you want to kind of read a deeper dive, you can read that article on EP or also read the game reports that are on his player page, on his stat page at Elite Prospects. But that wraps up this first segment here for us today. In the next one, we'll talk about two other big contenders that are going to really push McKenna and force him to grow in uncomfortable ways this season. But first, a quick message here from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app, and you can take those swings on anything that you want to. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live games and taken swings as the action unfolds live in front of me. I personally am always a big fan of those same game parlays and constructing my favorite kind of swings together into one single bet in order to maximize my potential return. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All righty, let's start this second segment off by talking about a hulking power playmaker out of the OHL, Ethan Belchetz, and he's been a blast to watch here early in the season, playing with the Windsor Spitfires in the Ontario Hockey League. He is huge, 6'5", 227 pounds as a left shot left winger. He's an Oakville, Ontario native, and this guy has certainly got his fingers all over a top 5 spot on draft day and certainly has some arguments in his favor for that second overall slot. He's been really, really gross so far this season with 8 goals and 13 points in just 11 games, playing on the top line in Windsor with the highly dynamic Liam Greentree, as well as the two-way details of Jack Nesbitt, 2 high first-round draft picks. You have a lot of pedigree on that line, but it's been a bit interesting in terms of how they've meshed so far this season. Greentree's a player that does not delegate puck touches to anybody. He does everything that he wants on his own. He's got the handling, the shot, the playmaking. Everything is a separating factor at the OHL level and probably will be as well when he goes to pro hockey. So he hogs the puck a little bit. And then you have Jack Nesbitt, who's not the most deft playmaker in the world, and it just has meant that Ethan Belchetz, like high-end off-puck movement. He's constantly finding little pockets of space, really dynamic in his ability to find those areas, get open, and then those little split seconds, which is just going to run rampant with NHL line mates who know how to get him the puck and expect where he's going to be. So his goal tally could have easily been way more than the 8 he scored so far this season. And that's definitely something to keep in mind here with his draft stock, as something that could explode as the year wears on. But he has so many assets that you love seeing in a player of this age. Belchetz is a really dynamic playmaker. He is a fierce power forward. He has unrelenting physicality. Beyond just being physical, he's just mean. He bruises opponents. He gets under their skin. He's just a pain to play against. And on top of that, with the puck on his stick, he's incredibly creative and skilled. That combination between ferocity and high-end creativity and skill is a relatively rare one coming through the NHL draft. And at his best, he's able to connect on incredibly deceptive passes, whether it be no look, a little shoulder shimmy to shake off a defender, and just like completely like wiring a pass cross seam onto the tape of a teammate. He's able to do it all as a playmaker. The skating's the clear weakness here with Belchetz. He's a bit clunky. He isn't able to really gain speed all that quick, but with his intelligence and with his anticipation and his strong off-puck movement, it hasn't been an issue really for him so far this season. Definitely something we'd like to see him work on, but not something that's going to really impede the impact he's going to have at the next level. His game doesn't hinge on his mobility. So for a player like this, who has this high-end level of intelligence, some decent defensive details to boot, and a situation with a lot of skill on his line, but chemistry that's still really just beginning to grow, there's room for an absolute explosion here this season. And if you were to ask me, I think at this stage, Belchetz would be my favorite for that second overall slot on draft day. Even though he's a winger, this is a relatively weak draft class for centermen. You don't have all that many options. I mean, Tyler Lawrence is fantastic from the Muskegon Lumberjacks, and you also have Yegor Shilov in the QMJHL, who's just lighting it up. He's fantastic, highly intelligent, really physical, great playmaker. But Belchetz has a level of special ability, I think beats out both of those. So I think that he could certainly have a shout here. But we're still going to discuss two more guys that have their fair share of arguments for second overall and in terms of pushing McKenna there at that number 1 slot. And the first of those two here is Ivar Stenberg, a really fun, dynamic winger out of Sweden, playing with Frölunda in the SHL, and he's been off to a torrid start. He's played 11 games so far in the SHL this season. He's already got 9 points. This is not a league where draft-eligible players score in bunches, and Stenberg's been able to do just that, playing largely middle six, second-line minutes. Started the season playing a little bit less, and he did have a game playing 18 minutes here this weekend against Malmö, and he got 3 assists in that performance, so he certainly did earn the ice time that he got in that game. But with this player, you have incredibly dynamic feet. He's one of the oldest players in the draft class, as a September 30th, 07 birthday, and a 6 foot, 181-pound frame isn't something that sets him apart in this class. But the feet, the intelligence, the maturity of the details, this guy looks like a 24-year-old playing in the SHL this season so far, not just in what he's able to do on puck, the creativity, the playmaking precision, and the patience on puck to wait for seams to open rather than trying to force anything, but also in terms of the off-puck detail. Stenberg has a whole array of tools, and he's a player that I think just has so much going for him. He, also has a lot of pedigree in his family, a whole hockey-playing family, most well-known, of course, being his older brother, Otto, prospect with the St. Louis Blues, drafted just 2 years ago. But Ivar is another level of talent compared to his family members. The true dynamism that he just oozes on every single shift. He just never looks overwhelmed. There's a real impressive level of composure in this player's game, and the pace he plays with, the downhill attacks that he just drives the middle lane. He's able to handle, quickly solve problems, skip past the defender, and then just like immediately hit a no-look pass to a teammate backdoor. There's so much that he brings to the equation, I think, as well, that this could just be a Lucas Raymond plus, like really pushing it upwards in terms of true dynamic skill compared to Raymond. And that's no slight to Lucas Raymond. He's a really special talent as well, but Stenberg has looked so impressive so far this season, and definitely a player that should be on your radar if you have any interest in the 2026 draft class. And if you made it so far into the video, I am betting that you do. But that wraps up the second segment. In the final one, we're going to wrap things up by talking about Keaton Verhoeff of the North Dakota Fighting Hawks, a player that I'll be watching a whole lot this season, and he's gotten off to a really good start, and we'll be breaking that down here right after the break. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings together your entire financial life in one clean, easy-to-use interface that you can use anywhere on either your phone or even your laptop. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, it is made for you, as it does all the heavy lifting. You can link all of your accounts in just minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel like you are in control of your money without ever needing to touch a single spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment, talking about Keaton Verhoeff, a player that is just a lot of fun to watch. This guy's got an absolute howitzer from the blue line, and he's already gotten onto the score sheet with that shot here in the college ranks. He's just played his first weekend of college action that I really enjoyed watching. The game reports I wrote about him are going to be live in the next day or two, so definitely go check those out if you have an EP premium subscription. But they were playing against the University of St. Thomas, and he scored in his debut performance. And let me tell you, this was a piss missile of a shot, if I'm saying it just blankly. This guy, like right off the face-off, really slow kind of puck, just kind of going towards him into the middle lane, and he just skates into it, winds up, and hammers it top left corner with a ferocity that I haven't seen from a blue liner in terms of a slap shot in a couple years, I think, in terms of like this level of power behind the shot that a defenseman can generate. And that precision as well on that shot was just so impressive. It was perfectly placed. It was incredibly powerful. It was impossible to save for the netminder from that range. And to do that just right off the face-off on his debut game, that's a whole bunch of fun. But it's not the only thing in his game that stands out. But I do want to highlight the shot because even on the power play, this guy sets up as like a throwback, like Shea Weber kind of position on the man advantage, where he drops into like a more of a winger position as just a pure shooting threat there from the top of the left circle. He loves getting fed from the other defensemen playing on the man advantage. North Dakota is running a 2D power play at this point because of the shooting threat that Verhoeff brings. And yeah, I can see why. There's a whole lot of reason to do so with his toolkit, but it's not the only thing he does that's really special. Verhoeff is a really smooth skater at 6'4", 212 pounds. He's also one of the younger players at the top end of this year's draft class as a June 19th 2008 birthday. So he's got runway, he's got size, he's got mobility, he's got a standout offensive trait. He's got a lot of dare in the offensive zone. He loves to create, and he can also dole out some physicality in terms of the defensive impact here. The motor can be special at his best. He's just constantly engaged, very involved. Sometimes he's over-aggressive, but for a player of this style, it's a bit easier to manage that aggression and dial it back a little bit than to grow it out of nothing. And I think that that's something to certainly keep an eye on here with Keaton. He's a player that is in terms of his trajectory, could end up as one of the truly elite blue liners in all of college hockey by year's end, and maybe even sooner than that, because he has all of the offensive tools. Of course, the shot is prevalent, but the handling skill is really deft as well. There's not much that you can really complain about in terms of the toolkit that he brings. That size, mobility, physicality, motor, shot, handling ability. Like, if you're somebody that has liked the way that Carter Yakimchuk plays hockey, Verhoeff is that with like 2 or 3 levels higher in terms of consistency and maturity and runway, and bringing a lot of the same kind of elements that make Yakimchuk so interesting and special for the Ottawa Senators, but having a lot more refinement on the defensive side of the puck, and using his physicality with a bit more of a risk assessment gauge, where Yakimchuk just blindly chases hits at times. Verhoeff is more calculated. Not to say it's always the case, but his agility, his edge work, his recovery speed are all things that make him be able to fix mistakes before they're able to hurt him and his team. And as well as a playmaker, he's able to use slip passes to get past individual opponents. Like, everything that you want in terms of an offensive toolkit from a blue liner is here. If it weren't for Matthew Schaefer last year, I'd be saying that this is the most interesting defenseman that we've seen coming through the draft in the last couple seasons. And even then, I think that he's certainly contending with Schaefer in terms of quality, but the first couple NHL performances from Schaefer, I think, can put that to bed at least for a little while before Verhoeff kind of proves himself at the NHL level, because Schaefer has just been lights out fantastic so far as like an almost 2026 draft eligible, which is just insane to wrap your head around. But yeah, there's a lot of players in this draft class that I think could really contend with McKenna at number 1, and we didn't even name all of them here in today's episode. A couple other guys to give shout outs to. We already mentioned one in Tynan Lawrence, but you also have Ryan Lynn, just a tremendous defenseman from the Vancouver Giants in the WHL, whose footwork and intelligence and overall just versatility is second to none among blue liners in the class. And then you have Mathis Preston, who could be the most dynamic player outside of McKenna and Stenberg in this class. And then you also have Xavier Villeneuve from Blainville-Boisbriand, who is a Lane Hudson like clone, who's just a bit bigger, a bit better defensively, a bit more mobile at the same age, and has the same kind of offensive dare, creativity, and playmaking penchant. So a lot of guys, I think, in this class that are just incredibly interesting. That's without even mentioning Ryan Rubrick, who we've certainly have had some qualms with so far at elite prospects with the start of the season, but the goal scoring is irreproachable. He scored 41 goals last season as D-1 year, which was the most since John Tavares, I believe, in the OHL as a D-1. But the intensity has certainly taken a dip this season as Rubrick has been a bit pouty in terms of off ice things to do with the Niagara Ice Dogs organization, but that's a topic for another day. That actually wraps up here today's show, and I hope that you enjoyed and learned a thing or two about this draft class. But I'd love to hear your impressions and opinions in the comments down below. Who is your favorite at number 1? I'm guessing it's Gavin McKenna, but what are some thoughts that you might have about what the likelihood is that he ends up ceding that spot to another contender who is able to push further than him as the year goes on? And is it going to be a guy that we talked about here today, or is it going to be someone that I only mentioned here at the very end in passing? I'd love to hear your opinions down below. And if you're listening on your podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. It's always appreciated. And for your second listen, you can head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything that you need to know to build yourself a sustainable and competitive fantasy roster. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian High, and I look forward to catching you tuning in again very, very soon.